how long would it take for our footsteps to disappear? He said, oh, maybe a half a century to a century.
Hi, this is Zena Harris.
And I'm Mark Rabin.
Welcome to the Tie-In.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Tie-In. This week, we're speaking with Larry Engel, and we had an awesome conversation with him. He's such a cool cat, and he's been around the block like 5 times, 10 times.
Never. Yeah, what a cool guy, right? Like,
Yeah.
such fun stories. Wait, stay to the end of the podcast. That's a fun story.
Yeah, so. I just want to hear stories, like
totally.
He's been there, done that, and he's still doing it. And I think that's the coolest, most inspiring part, right? He's teaching what he preaches.
Yeah, and just think of all the folks, just like the ripple effect. That's kind of been this kind of theme that we've been rolling on this year. And I mean, he's been doing this for so long, teaching students about sustainable production is kind of an aha moment for him. And just think of the lives he's touched and the ripple effect there. It's super cool. That kind of stuff like really pulls at my heartstrings. So
yeah, and I mean, I remember, didn't he like coin sustainable production, or there's some sort of like, I can't remember what it is, but
I don't know, man, but he probably, right? So
there was something that he was one of the first to do sustainable reporting or something like that. For all of you guys, we record these things at a different time than when we do this banter on a weekly basis. So it's just jogging the memory here.
He's a good one. So I hope you guys enjoy really Larry. You and I are in flux. Like there's, several things going on always. We're up against the holidays. I feel like I've been running hot. Anxiety is a little up at the end of the year, that kind of thing, to get things done. How are you feeling?
Yeah. I'm feeling pretty good overall. Like health is good. And yeah, I think, who those of you following along, I mean, I've been in a process of relocating and just kind of moving around. So that's behind me now. And so I'm finding myself here at my desk in San Francisco. And, I'll be bouncing between San Francisco and Vancouver. But this is going to be home base for a little bit. So yeah, anybody who's in San Francisco or Bay Area, hit me up. But yeah, things are good. And then I'm going away. I'm actually going to take the Christmas holidays off and do a little solo trip to Peru. So I've never been down there and looking forward to it. So that's going to be awesome. And it's been a long time since I've done like something like that, like a backpacking kind of solo trip.
Okay, so you're going to be backpacking. I was going to ask you, like, what kind of trip is this?
No roller bags.
No roller bags.
Carry on backpack.
It all. That's cool. Yeah. Wow, it's like trip after college. Way to go.
Exactly. Except for in my mid 40s.
Well,
midlife trip, middle passage trip.
Middle passage trip. So when you get back at the in the new year, like, it's gonna be a whole new you.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't wait.
With 1,000 emails in my inbox.
Yeah, don't let that drag you down.
It's crazy days. Speaking of crazy days, though, we're talking about this today on Friday, and the Warner Bros. Or the Netflix Warner Bros. Deal just came out. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, geez. I mean, I woke up to it this morning. Like first thing I looked at my phone, like I've got people sending me articles. So it was, like it's definitely been a buzz in our industry. So, I mean, I don't know, look, like legacy assets, good deal. It's just kind of a strange thing because the idea of legacy media, like what folks grew up, I mean, this is phasing out fast, right? Like there is change happening. And this is just, I think sends people in a bit of this has been coming. We've known this roadway for a little while in the sense like Warner Brothers is up for sale. Like who's going to buy it? That kind of thing. So like, it's not a super surprise. It's just, when it's announced, it's more official and, things are, you're starting to sign deals and these sorts of things. It's, Yeah, it makes you think about like what the future of theatrical releases and the experience of movies and these sorts of things. So that seems very much in flux or
Yeah, I
uncertain.
mean, I do know I've had some sort of insider chats that, folks at Warner Bros. Are actually excited,
Yeah,
that Netflix is the acquirer, right? Because obviously Netflix is a media company, but also like a tech company, and so can really, hopefully catapult Warner Bros. In the right direction to stay ahead of the curve and be part of the next wave of media and production. So, I
yeah,
mean, I think that's a good thing. I think this continues to go down the monopolistic, behavior of these huge mega conglomerates. So I'm sure there's going to be some pushback around that at the federal level. It'll probably
we'll
go through.
see.
It'll probably, yeah, well, it'll probably go through. But I mean, I think this does bring up, like, bigger issues here around the consolidation of media and power, right? Around that. Um,
Oh, yeah,
I mean, who knows?
100%.
It's gonna be interesting days. We do know there's a lot of carnage everywhere, and yeah, this is interesting. At least on
Hmm.
the sustainability side, I mean, we know Netflix is super strong, and a leader in the industry, so that's a good thing.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, well, they're, acquiring a lot of additional productions, right? So, yeah, we'll see how it all rolls out. I think this is, early days. There's a lot to do in these kinds of rollouts,
Yeah,
and acquisitions. I used to work on acquisitions back in the day, and so like behind the scenes, I was in HR, you
yeah,
know, like all the like little details, nitty gritty, on these kinds of things. So, whew, good luck
yeah,
out there.
yeah. Good luck. It's 80 billion dollars.
Yeah, yeah, right around there. Yeah. So
Yep,
anyway,
yep. There it is.
and this is our week. Um,
Enjoy the interview with Larry. We really had a great time. So I hope
yeah,
you enjoy.
yeah. And do like and subscribe and share with someone. Honestly, like this is how we build up the community, the normalization of sustainability, and really uplift the people that we talk to.
Yeah.
So,
And if you're in film school or if film school adjacent, share this with them as well. Because
uh-huh.
Larry is a university professor and he's been doing this for a long time and he's super inspirational. Yeah. So please share, like, and subscribe.
Hello, everyone. Today we are here with Larry Engel. He is a professor at American University and division director of the Film and Media Arts. He's associate director of the Center for Environmental Filmmaking and faculty affiliate at the School of International Service. He has nearly 50 years of teaching and filmmaking experience and 350 projects under his belt. His documentaries appear on PBS, the Discovery Channel, and National Geographic, among many other outlets. Awards include a Daytime Emmy for Best Cinematography and 6 more for writing and producing. Hello. And the Mountain Spirit Award from Mountain Film in Telluride. Still going. His teaching focuses on theory, production, and emerging media. His favorite classes include Classroom in the Wild, Extreme HD Alaska, and the practice of environmentalism that takes students to the Galapagos Islands and Cuba. Huh, Larry.
Wow. Professor Engel, welcome to the tie-in.
Good
This
to,
is we're gonna learn some stuff here today. I have a good feeling.
yeah, I
Oh,
got to admit, I've been really lucky in my career and my teaching. I've been on all 7 continents multiple times.
Wow.
Favorite place on the planet's Antarctica. I've been there 4 times.
wow.
Wow.
Wow. Tell us about that. What have you observed over the last 4 times? I mean, obviously we see what the media has to say, right? Every other day, some big ice shelf kind of falls off, and we're all doomed. But what are your observations?
Well, I haven't been on the ice in many years, in several decades, so I only can keep up with the news that we get, from science. And the saddest part for me is the impact of global warming on the ice sheets and the impact that shrinking ice and increased difficulty of accessing the water from the ice has on, in particular, my favorite species on Earth, the emperor penguin.
Mm.
Uh, the males spend the winter incubating the eggs in a big mass, and they kind of move and surge around, and the penguins that are on the outside kind of rotate inside, and then they come back out. But there it used to be an easy kind of access from the colony to the water where they'd kind of dive in. Now there are areas in the colonies where it's like a 50-foot drop, or they can't get
Yeah.
the females can't get back out. So, you know, it's an impact. But for me, Antarctica is the place that reminded me that our species, Homo sapiens, are essentially guests on the planets. We don't own it. We're
Mhm.
here, courtesy of evolution, courtesy of gravity, and courtesy of an atmosphere. And it is the most humbling place I've ever been because you are in a precarious, constantly life affirming and life assessing and potentially dangerous position. And, you know, if you've been to Alaska or the Yukon or anywhere north, or even in the Rockies, you know, or in the mountains in the Dolomites, wherever you are, you know what snow is and you know what ice is. But in Antarctica, there aren't any trees.
Mhm.
There are no roads. There are no houses. There's no vegetation except on the peninsula. And so basically, you're bereft of all the indicators of other kinds of life and society and culture. And so the memory of being on the ice sustains me in the sense that it's the harshest place to live anywhere in the world, and there are no permanent colonies or homes or societies there. It's all research. Um, and yet it teaches me that our planet is fragile, you
Mhm.
know, and so the crises that we face with climate change and environmental impact of that change and human activity is something to work hard and quickly from the top down and bottom up to change. You know, I believe that every individual has a moral obligation to change their behavior, and that's why I got into sustainability and green filmmaking
Yeah.
many,
So
many years ago.
yeah. Well, so how did that happen? Like, was it because of a trip, or did you
Yeah,
did you?
yeah. So, well, Zena, you and I sit on the Jackson Wild Green Innovation Production Award,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I helped with a couple of other dear friends create the category and push Jackson Wild to
Hmm.
move towards recognizing green production.
Hmm.
But in 2007, I went to it was then the Jackson Hole Wildlife Film Festival and Summit. And for those who don't know what it is, it's one of the world's premier conferences, congregations, if you will, of environmental conservation and wildlife filmmakers, big and small,
Hmm.
um, that was held biannually until the teens when it was clear that we needed to make it annually. So I was in Jackson in 2007, and I went to a presentation by a British producer, now retired, Andrew Buchanan, and he was talking about carbon in the air, 2007, that we needed to start measuring carbon when we made our wildlife films. And he was talking about I don't think they really existed, but he was talking about we need to calculate, we need to know how our processes of media creation impact the environment for the future. And I'm kind of scratching my head going, this is kind of interesting because a couple of years before, an event happened in Moab in the American Southwest in the desert. We were filming with researchers, biology, but also we were looking for petroglyphs from antiquity. And we were walking, we had about five of us for the crew and the scientists that we were filming. And we were walking on this kind of dark brown, black surface over the desert, right? And it was a crunch, crunch, crunch. Everybody's kind of walking. We're carrying our tripods, or, this is back in the day when we were shooting Super 16. So there's a lot of stuff, even for a small crew. And I stopped and I asked one of the scientists, what were we walking on? And they said, oh, that's biofilm. I said, what's that? And he said, well, it's a biomass that's made up of kind of a synergy between lichen and bacteria. And I said, so we're stepping on something that's living? And he said, oh, yeah, yeah. I said, oh, how long, I asked, would it take for our footsteps to disappear and recover? He said, oh, maybe a half a century to a century. And I said, holy crap. So I said, everybody, okay, stop. We will now walk single file.
Right.
And that was kind of my kind of aha moment, that what I was doing for, my, at the time, 30 years in film, absolutely had unintentional consequences to clearly other species, the environment. And that got me thinking that I needed to do something, and I've always been a filmmaker and a teacher. It would have been easier for me to have just been a filmmaker or a professor at university, but I couldn't do one without the other. So then I was thinking, and that's when I met Andrew. And after his presentation, I said, I think we should, write a book. We should write something about how to be sustainable. And so for 2 years, we did research. We sent out a survey around the world to global filmmakers, international filmmakers. We got 178 responses to a survey about what they were doing vis-a-vis the environment and carbon emissions, and realized that not much was being done. And so we came up, and we were supported by the Ford Foundation and the World Wildlife Fund through American University's Center for Social Media and Impact, and published the Code of Best Practices for Sustainable Filmmaking in 2009. And the first thing there are only 5 principles, but the first one basically says that you have to think about environmental impact in pre-production at the beginning, and everybody has to buy into it. You can't dictate. It has to be participatory. It has to be a buy-in. And unbeknownst to Andrew and me, in 2011, a producer by the name of Katja Schwartz, translated the code, the entire code, and all the Excel spreadsheets that we had, as the first spreadsheet that we had, into German. And she, in 2011, tested the code and not the calculator, but the recording of impact on a short documentary and a short fiction film that her company was doing, and proved that it worked. They saved money, they lowered their impact, and that became the foundation for the German green budgeting code that is in practice today. It also, the Doc Society UK Green documentary protocol also cites Andrew and me as kind of being forerunners, so
Yeah.
it took a while to catch on, but with where the EU is now, doing better in Canada and the States, I'm more optimistic than ever.
Yeah. And it's like, Larry, I have to say, I referenced you as well in my master's thesis. Back in, I was doing it in 2011 and turned it in 2012. And the work that you did, that guide, I referenced. So I knew about
We
you
essentially have
a long
been
time ago.
we've known each other a really long time, but who knew? Yeah.
Oh, and then I saw you at Jackson Wild, just popping up in this, the for the green film category. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the guy who, like way back in the day.
Yeah, before anybody, it's like, I remember, my students would go, "What are you talking about?" Colleagues in the profession would say, uh, yeah, that's going to cost too much. We have to think about other stuff. We, got ratings, we got to do a budget. And I kept saying, yeah, but you actually, you can save money actually paying attention to this stuff, you
Mhm.
know. And the real problem is that there's false budgeting. You can't say that there isn't a cost when you fly an extra person somewhere. Or you can't really truly say, well, we're going to be in country filming, elephants or whatever, but we're going to leave and not really contribute to the Masai Mara's well-being, because all that is a continuation of extractive colonialism.
Mhm.
It's just, if we don't sustain all the individuals and species in an area, um, we're not accounting for the true cost of documentary filmmaking or fiction filmmaking or media creation in general.
Or our entire economy and capitalist system and all of the products and goods that we consume. But
Yeah, that's
yeah,
very true. Well, and so now what I've been really concentrating on is um, helping folks, especially students, because I'm old. I have a few years left, I hope. But it's, you're a generation, below that have a chance for change. And then our students are the next
yeah,
generation that have the responsibility, and they understand because they're you guys and they are inheriting, literally a world on fire.
yeah.
And I feel
So
it, Larry. I do.
yeah, I mean, look, I'm wondering if I'm going to get any snow in northern Maryland, and
Mm,
20 years ago when we moved, we had snow,
Yeah.
you know,
yeah.
but now, so it's also looking at the ecosystem of film, so it's like, do you need to have a big camera that runs 12K or whatever to make your film, or can you use this?
Mm,
And I mean, I teach smartphone filmmaking because even though it's environmentally intense for manufacturing, um, it's available and it's there. So why not use, the technologies and the systems, and look at vendors and systems that are all thinking about the environment and taking action.
Mhm.
Larry, what are just so that, a lot of us are not necessarily in film school anymore. It feels like it's a generation removed, like you mentioned. What are film students these days thinking about? Is this something that's top of mind for them in terms of sustainability in filmmaking, or is it still something that has to be, you're still guiding them through this? What are they talking about? What are they thinking about? I'm curious.
Well, I have little beagle below me and a cat behind me. They may make appearances.
Yeah.
They're honestly, they're worried about one thing in particular right now, and that's AI.
Mm.
And part of it is the intensity that AI draws from the environment, in terms of electricity, water, land use. Um, and they're worried about its impact on visual storytelling. Will they have jobs in the future? Um, at AU, we're kind of saying, okay, it's here. We're using it. We've been using AI in one form or another for a very long time. I mean,
Mhm.
Google searches, reminders, all sorts of stuff, right? It's been here. So it's not really anything new. It's just expanded and grown and rebranded and whatever. So I think we need to know what it is, especially when it comes to generative AI. But we also need data. We really, and some of the data on the environmental impact from AI is murky intentionally because of the big the big tech companies. They're not releasing, they're not making apparent what the environmental cost is of, say, doing a generative 10-second AI prompt,
Mhm.
right? But uh, on the other hand, AI can be helpful in sustainability in terms of budgeting, in
Hmm.
terms of efficiencies in research and organization and pre-production, even in post. I mean, if you edit some of the Zoom, you'll be using some AI in some fashion. So that's what they're worried about, and we're trying to provide opportunities for discussion and conversation. On the other hand, I remember I came to AU after 28 years at Columbia University in New York City, and I just was getting tired of cleaning up my classroom for the next professor, taking the trash, plastic bottles, water bottles, soda. And so I came to class one day and I said, uh, plastics are no longer allowed in my classroom. And the students then, 2006, sort of said to me, that's not fair. And they went to the dean, complained that I was basically a bastard. And so the dean called me into his office. Said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I just said you can't bring, stuff that's even if it's recyclable. I don't want it in my
Yeah.
class." And he said, "Oh, that sounds pretty cool." I said, okay, so I didn't get in trouble. But now there's no question from my
Yeah.
students, like when we have receptions, it's all meatless, and my students don't complain. My students celebrate the fact that, this old guy is paying attention to what's on the plate, you know.
Free food.
So, yeah, well, free food, that's true. And usually it's not pizza. So
Right.
let that be known too, from me to you. But we're looking at ways of incorporating green filmmaking on both sides of the camera.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, we spend a lot of time. Okay, let's use LEDs. Let's use natural light. Small crews. There's very common things that we know we can do to save the environment, reduce our impact, and save money.
Mhm.
But it's also like through good energy .org, this good storytelling.
Yeah, yeah.
Thinking about what's going on the other side of the camera. And so we're talking in our screenwriting classes about, in a way, if we have product placement for capitalistic goods, why not do the same for the environment?
Mhm.
If it's a fiction film, if there's a character who, you know, lives downtown in Toronto, how are they getting to work? Are they walking? Are they taking a bicycle, e-bike, metro? they drive in a car. If it's a car, what kind of car?
Yeah.
Is it a Prius? Is it a electric? So in a way, props and art design can come into play, you know.
Yeah.
And then there's thematic issues, and then how to really not use a sledgehammer to kind of clobber people about climate, um, but how to creatively and in an entertaining way inform and convince. So we have the Center for Environmental Filmmaking at AU, which is primarily a documentary proposition, if you will.
Mhm.
But we had a MFA student come in to the program wanting to do environmental filmmaking, but she really got obsessed with directing and fiction work. And her capstone project was basically an environmentally themed zombie film. So the
Wow.
apocalypse happened because of an environmental catastrophe. And so that's a creative way of just bringing our stories to the public. And we're never going to be able to convince climate deniers that the world is changing, and that it's our collective industrial revolution source. And people who want to deny it will deny it. And for me, I can't waste my time on arguing. I can only I can only work to convince the folks in the middle to kind of pay attention.
Each. Yeah. Yeah. Mark, did you want to say I can?
No,
Oh, okay.
no. I,
'Cause
I
I'm
was
like,
waiting for you to say something.
Yeah. So I was talking with Zena a little before we started. We belong at American University through the Film and Media Arts Division to the Green Film School Alliance.
yeah.
That's part basically of the University Film and Video Association here in the States, but it has international schools. We're, I think, 30, 40 schools. And so and that's kind of student driven at our schools. There are climate activists or ambassadors, and they go to classroom and say, look, here's the Green Film School Alliance's, spreadsheet. Here's, guides and sources to help. And what's really cool is that our students, if they during pre-production and then in post fill out a simple spreadsheet that's based on the PGA's Peach guideline, they can qualify for an Environmental Media Association Green Seal. And what's cool about that is that even though there's no real verification, you can take pictures and submit the fact that you didn't have plastic and whatever. Being able to put a kind of a certificate of green production at the end of your short film is, to me, a competitive advantage for the student.
Mhm.
It shows this, and you put it on your resume, and it says, "Look, I'm thinking about this stuff." And in our profession, impact producing and for social media impact and sustainability coordinators and producers basically are a growing part of the industry. So why not be competitive and do it when you're a student? We also belong to an international association of film schools, and that's called SELECT. It's CILECT.org. And we're 182 schools around the world. We have 5 regions on all our continents except Antarctica. And last year in Beijing, we created only the 3rd standing committee for SELECT. And SELECT's been around since the mid-50s trying to bridge the Iron Curtain and the Cold War, right, through film. So I'm humbled that I'm the inaugural chair of the select standing committee on sustainability.
Hmm.
And over the course of our first year, we created 20 new ideas for going green for schools. And and we have members from all the regions in our collective, um, in our collective. And what we learned is that the global north is moving more rapidly towards green tools, green filmmaking, both professionally and in schools, and the global south generally is lagging. And it's it's somewhat cultural, but it's more economic. You know, in the global north, generally it's easier to get reusable containers. And in other parts of the world, it's not so easy. Now, it's not exclusively North and South, because areas in Asia also are similarly affected. And even in the EU, there's a difference actually between Scandinavia and Northern Europe and Southern Europe, you know, Greece, Israel, Turkey, a little bit in Spain. You know, they're not going as forward, but in the EU in particular, there's a mandate from any government or state-funded production that you have to have a green budget and you have to use a calculator,
Hmm.
whether there's several out there. So what we realized is that we have to work, you know, across experiences. And so we started with saying, okay, most places, most schools, and most professions are not working with sustainability yet. So let's help them first, right? What can we provide? And so basically what we provided are a slide deck of 20 ideas. You know, they're really kind of simple. You know, for instance, for costume and wardrobe, don't use fast fashion. Go to, you know, go to your grandparents, your parents, find used stuff that works, or, you know, go to the thrift store, whatever. If recycle, and if you don't have a recycling scheme, you know, in the municipality, start recycling at your school and at home. Collect what you got and sell it to a recycling vendor. Take that money, put it into a production or a film festival. That came to us from one of our members out of Mexico. That's what she did, Aurora. Um, you know, so, and then we also have a green library, an online green library that has, you know, calculators and a whole bunch of resources that I'll share with you all. But interesting, what we decided was not to have that housed on Google, because Google doesn't pay attention to environmental damage. So we found a couple sites and we went with a platform that offers you 10 gigabytes free, that is encrypted and only uses renewable energy. And that came out of Slovakia. So, you know, when you think about our ecosystem, being mindful of sourcing outside of just making a film becomes important.
Hmm. And I love that you're thinking about this kind of, from a, multi-country perspective here. It's not just like US centric or North America. It's just you're pulling these ideas from all over the place. And that's probably inspiring for students as well.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, almost no matter where you are on the planet professionally, you're doing co-productions. And where there's kind of more money is out of Europe, United States, Canada. So even if in the US or Canada you're not really doing green budgeting or calculator, if you enter into an agreement with, you know, any EU country or Britain, you are obliged to know what this stuff is, you know,
Yeah.
is. You got to do it. So
Yeah.
we need to train for the immediate future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, so what do you ever get students coming to you with new ideas about how to, like what they're noticing and what they're, how they may want to evolve some of the things that are listed in the various guides? Does that ever happen?
I think that the students are eager to learn about calculators, spreadsheets, and green themes and production reductions. But I think they're still in that learning space.
Mm-hmm.
What the Green Films School Alliance does have is a monthly meeting for the ambassadors, the students themselves. And so they have conversations about what's happening at their schools. And so they're trading ideas and information.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our students are starting to get green seals, but I'm not getting a lot of, oh, how about doing this? I think they're still learning and applying.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think part of it is that we're in a place where, again, from a professor's point of view, there's sometimes resistance because, oh, now I have to add green, and sustainability stuff to an already packed syllabus, so what am I going to take out? What am I going to do? And say, okay, just take it easy. It's not that.
Yeah.
But and then also professionally, asking a producer to start working on this, they go, oh my God, if I'm a line producer, I've got to get the production done. It's like,
Yeah.
so I think that more and more people are acknowledging that we have to change, and there is change and there is resistance to change.
Mm-hmm.
But innovation, I think to your point, like I mean, like, you can't blame a film student who's just learning about the tricks of the trade to do it. Innovation comes from doing, you see something over and over again, and you're like, this just doesn't make sense. I can make it better and do it better. So I think that, a lot of the innovation that we're seeing are coming out of the practitioners that have been in the field for a long time. And we were just at the Sustainable Production Forum earlier this week. And I mean, a lot of the folks that are there were younger folks in film students, but there are people who've been in the industry for 10, 20, 30 years who are the ones who are driving this change and these initiatives.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, if you reframe your thinking about production and creation, media creation, to include environmental impact and consumption, then I think folks who've been around a while have knowledge and wisdom sometimes, and can creatively think of ways to save carbon imprints or impacts and actually save money. I mean, that's the irony of it is
Yeah.
that, I mean, the biggest cost is air travel.
Mhm.
If you
That's a lot.
can, and if you can fly two people instead of five, you save money and you save carbon emissions,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and you are involving more people locally. And that's good for basically everybody. But I also love the word consumption
Mhm.
because we are a consumer society, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the model.
That is the model on.
Well, I just moved out of my house, my apartment and then, and I was like, how did I even buy all this crap? Like, why? And I couldn't even sell it, right? I had to give it away. I did like put free, and then people to come pick it up, and I was like, what am I doing, right? And
Yeah,
I'm not like
yeah,
a heavy consumer of crap here,
no,
but
but you do accumulate. Like we moved about a year ago out of a row house, 1900s downtown small city in Maryland, to the country, to a much bigger house. And we packed too, and I just could not believe how much clothing I acquired,
Yeah.
like 50 years, and stuff that I bought in the 80s, I still wear. And so why did I end up buying all that crap? And my wife is the one who just told me to get rid of, give it to Goodwill. So
Yeah.
it's gone to good use, but you're right.
Yeah.
So consumption, however, also is an old term for a devastating disease that eats the human body from within, namely tuberculosis. And
Mm.
that's what consumption does. It eats our environment from within, right? So if you think about a consumer society, maybe you can reframe things that we maybe not want to do that much consumption because
Right.
you know, it's
Yeah,
screwing things up pretty good, unhealthy.
Mhm.
that's true.
Very much so.
Very true. I had thought about the disease form of consumption, but you're absolutely right. That's such a neat way to think about it. Um,
What do you reframe it as? I mean, just before we leave that thought, like what do we name it something else? I mean, there's the minimalist movement, right? There's the buying nothing. There's
Like, I mean, be mindful movement,
the mindful movement.
mindful movement. Yeah. I just, that's really what it is. Be mindful. Do you
yeah,
need this? Do you,
yeah,
it's like food. Do you need to eat all this stuff? What sustains you rather than what do you want?
Yeah.
And,
right.
maybe there's some
Yeah.
stuff, some stuff there.
I think it's so interesting. Mark said we just we're at the Sustainable Production Forum, and the nuance and how people are talking about this. This was the 10th year, so we've seen like this shift year over year slightly, and now we're talking about things in a different way than we were, 10 years ago for sure. And it's nuanced and it's more mindful and heartfelt, and people are talking about caring and regeneration, and we're bringing in different ideas that 10 years ago would have been like, what are you talking about? We don't even, we have no idea
Mm.
about that. But it's been an evolution. So, in all your work in the industry and teaching students, what have you noticed?
I think it's the same kind of thing. I think it's, back in 2007 to 9, it's like, why are you writing that?
Mhm.
Who's going to pay attention to a little old code? And we said, well, it's like time to really change things. And again, I really have seen a change. Not so much, well, maybe in the profession through Jackson Wild, because people are, trying to be sustainable from small scale to large, right?
Mhm.
And so, we get a variety of applications,
Yeah.
and they're growing. And we're seeing more Albert input and more calculators.
Mhm.
And I would recommend everybody to really just check out Carbon Clap out of France, because that is a robust carbon calculator, relatively easy to use, and it's free.
Mhm.
So we've seen science and communication come together so that the spreadsheets that we started with that are still used by PGA and the Green Film School Alliance, um, they're a good starting point after you really are going green. But they're still clunky because you got to input it in all the data. But with these calculators, it's so much more intuitive, and um, um, the feedback loop
Mhm.
on making choices about green production is immediate.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think I've seen, certainly among students, an eagerness to help save the planet.
Mhm. Mhm.
Whereas before it was, like I said earlier, kind of, it's like, yeah, it's nice, but I got to go make my film. I have a deadline, 6 weeks before air for PBS. got to get it in. We'll talk later. But
It's systems management.
Yeah.
It's
Um,
like instead of, you know, learning and growing and changing and evolving, it's and doing that because you want to, right? Because you think that's cool. So
yeah. Hey, Larry, I'm just dying to know though here at in your 50 years of teaching and making films, and what's the wildest story that you have? Like, what is that? Maybe to put you on the spot here, but I'm just like, do you have a moment in your career that when you look back, you're like, wow, that was the craziest thing, or that was the pinnacle of this thing?
I, I got a bunch. They range to frightening to absurd.
Yeah.
Um, I think one of the more frightening events actually did happen in Antarctica. You kind of live and die by the weather, and there are very few weather stations. Like in the States, there's pretty much a weather station every 50 miles, square miles, So they're all over. In Antarctica, it's like every 500 to 1,000 miles. So you have to look to the horizon to see what's happening. And we were on a private expedition flying twin otters to the Transantarctic Mountains to climb a mountain. And the pilots saw like a little kind of a white wave on the horizon. And like we were flying, everything's going well, and they just over the headphone said, "We got to land." And it was like, boom, right down on the ice. There are no runways, it's just the ice. So you just land wherever. But within 20 minutes, we set up our tents, we anchored the plane, build snow walls for the prevailing western winds, and we were in our tents when a whiteout just hit us. It was like 20 minutes, from being in the air to being on the ice. We had to protect ourselves, and a couple tents got blown down, so that was kind of like, okay, that's a little humbling. And then it took about 24 hours before we actually literally came out of our tents. So that's one. Oh, another time, this is very early in my career, I was doing a film about the Wyoming overthrust where the Rockies kind of jutted up, and that's on the plateau is where there was a lot of oil and petroleum. And so I had this idea for a shot where we're flying along the plains, and then we had a nose camera. We'll kind of lift up, and we'll see this cliff, this 500-foot cliff, and then we'll just hover over it, and then continue on. So it'd be really dramatic, right? So, and at the time, the best film pilots and helicopter pilots were actually Vietnam War veterans. And so we did it a few times, and I didn't think it was dramatic enough, and then kind of trying to convince the pilot to get a little closer and hover faster. And, it was the last take, and you hear over the headphones the pilot say two words, a simple phrase, "Oh shit." And that's something you really don't want to have a pilot ever say. And what happened was we got too close to the cliff, and we started to, instead of rise, kind of keep going forward and start going down. So we lost our lift for a couple of seconds. I said, "Okay, we're done.
Yeah.
Cool. That's a cut.
Got it.
We're wrapped. Let's."
I'm a quick story. I'm a geologist by trade, and I worked a lot of field work in my early career. And I was also doing a lot of helicopter work in the mountains in northern British Columbia. And we had an inexperienced bush pilot, and we had buzzed the top of this fairly large mountain and just kind of just came up over, and we did the same thing. We hit a negative air
Ooh.
pocket on the back side of this mountain and free fell in the helicopter. And I screamed like like a 12-year-old girl, and just like literally we free fell. I mean, and it just like it was the most traumatic experience of my life in terms of like air travel. And yeah, and then he regained control and we flew out. And I mean, he played it cool, but you could see in his face, he was like a Slavic, it's like a Slavic pilot. He couldn't really speak English well, but he was visibly shaken. And I was like, if that guy is visibly shaken, a Bush pilot, it
Yeah,
was so. I hear you.
if that happens, yeah. Um, but the lessons for me in those circumstances actually help inform me about sustainability because it makes you it reminds you that what you do has consequences, and it's like you can get into making another shot and doing, do all this lighting and whatever, but at the at the bottom line, what's sustainable? What can you do? Yeah, I mean, I co-produced the first hour-long film about chasing tornadoes and flying into hurricanes, two separate one-hour films for Nova. And this is back in the day of film, and so we're flying into the eye of the storm, eye of Hurricane Gilbert in the '80s, and we had an air pocket like you did, and I'm actually in the changing bag, loading film, on the floor of the plane, and then all of a sudden I look over at my sound buddy, and he's actually in midair reaching for his boom pole that's floating up towards the ceiling. And I look down and I'm like a foot or two off the ground in free fall. And then, we hit the pocket.
Yeah.
And it came back in. So, yeah. So, and I do work with my students on safety. That's also part of the filmmaking equation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
we really appreciate this, Larry, and hearing your stories and all the work
Mhm.
that you've done over the years. I mean, really, really grateful for that. So,
Appreciate it. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, just keep up the fight, keep up the good work, and just everybody think about what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, be mindful.
Yeah, exactly.
Music is by Peter Chapman. Social media is by Picnic Social. Our editor and producer is Rachel Werble.